A foreign guest from Poland, for example, does not have any problems with buying anything. He pays a double or even a triple price, and then he has the right to select at a private store the best piece of pork, for example. But even the government is unhappy with this, not only with the people in the streets. It considers that this is an undermining of the economy. So the only thing the government can do is to issue its latest prohibition. So we're not letting it into the country. So, but it is the work of the customs house to worry about where this goes. Incidentally, these hams and very choice cuts were sent to a collective farm, which is breeding fur-bearing animals. So the Soviet mafia has found a little niche in the German border. People who buy things in Germany can get their 14% tax back at the border if they take it out of the country. But there are very few border guards in the former East Germany, and they can't control the situation. And these enterprising people, with the help of their so-called colleagues, are claiming to be exporting roughly 20% of goods, and they are bribing customs house workers, and tens of millions of marks are escaping the German treasury. Here is Berlin, the suburb of Charlottenburg. 90% of the gaming houses are in the hands of former Soviet citizens, and they also have cheap stores for selling cheap goods. So we have a lot of racketeering here, beatings, dum-dum bullets, weapons, and this is a sort of shock. These former Soviets are totally, they pay no attention to the law. There are dozens of cases against them, but even so, this is only the tip of the iceberg, because people are afraid to talk to the police because they fear repressions, and most of the criminals are from the Caucasus. Well, here at home, we find ourselves sitting on sacks of dollars, but we don't even know that. But maybe we don't even know how to use these dollars. The Minister of Defense, Shaposhnikov, has permitted flyers to earn currency abroad by utilizing military aircraft. This is the AN-124, the Ruslan, which is such a good plane that it hardly knows what distance means. A year ago, the Ruslan had completed a round-the-world trip with only 3 landings. This was financed by the businessmen Victor and Alexander Jamrize. Here they returned to Moscow, and they proposed to the Air Force that they form a joint enterprise utilizing the AN-124, which formerly was used only for military purposes. If once we get free up for AN-124 planes, we will be able to bring in up to 1 billion rubles into the country. So the contract for 92 foresees that military aviation will bring into our country tens of millions of dollars. And the amount of profit they make later will depend on the amount of planes which will be servicing international routes. And now, as for our profits, the Ministry of Finances in the USSR reminds people that payment of bonds issued between 47 and 56 will be made in the banks only until the 15th of December of the current year. Today in Moscow, the latest Soviet-American conference on economic cooperation has opened. The political and economic instability in the country within the individual fiefdoms is causing a good deal of concern among our foreign partners. Nevertheless, there are such breakhead optimists who don't lose hope. These are American businessmen who have come to Moscow to meet with their Soviet colleagues and attempt to figure out where everything is headed. This is the International Fund for promoting privatization. And here we see the participation of Mr. Yeltsin, who noted that a market mechanism was being founded, but the chief role would belong to the republics. Direct intergovernmental contacts will be conducted with the republics and not with the Soviet Union. We will have direct contacts on the level of entrepreneurs, enterprises, firms, and regions. Today, Lech Walesa, the president of Poland, talking to Gorbachev, said that on his part, he would encourage the reforms in Russia and Soviet Union. He felt that the disintegration of the Union was fraught with danger for all of Europe. Today, there was a meeting of Yeltsin with Mr. Shevardnadze. They discussed questions having to deal with the foreign policy of the country, given the new interaction between the center and Russia. It was a closed-door meeting. Today, Eduard Shevardnadze met with the chairman of the Supreme Soviet of Estonia, Arnold Ruto. These were bilateral talks where they stressed the potential for economic cooperation on the basis of the centuries-long cooperation of the Estonian and Russian peoples, and likewise other nationalities. The opening of the Madrid conference, with participation of Israelis and Arabs, inspired hope for a peaceful resolution. Today, the second round opened in Moscow, but the Israelis did not arrive as was expected. The negotiations began in an atmosphere of uncertainty. Yesterday, no one knew where the meeting would take place or whether it would take place. Today, this fog has broken up somewhat. The meeting began here at the State Department in D.C., but even photojournalists were not admitted to the opening. The representative of the State Department, Margaret Tutwiler, said that they did not want the photographers to see the empty chairs of the Israeli delegates. Today at the meeting, there were only emissaries from Syria, Lebanon, and also the United Jordan-Palestinian delegation. As for Israel, at first his government was opposed to the meeting being held in Moscow at all. They wanted to have bilateral negotiations with the Arabs, but then Prime Minister Shamir softened his position, and he decided to send people to Washington, but he demanded that the conference be delayed till the 9th. Israel was quite clearly demonstrating its displeasure at the demands of Bush. Evidently, real discussions will begin only next week, but in the meantime, the place and time of the next meeting will have been determined. This will be in Moscow in 28th of November. As the ambassador to the United States from Israel announced, Israel would send its delegation to the United States only next week. The delegation, a competition delegation, is yet to be determined. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and Finances of the European Community has prepared a document with regard to the Soviet Union. Here we have the 20 country participants, who have established an agreement with regard to introducing a common currency, but there would be an exception for Great Britain, which would preserve, as an exception, the pound sterling as its national currency. currency. Today, there was liberated the last American hostage, Terry Anderson, in Lebanon. He spent 6 years and more than 9 months. He's 44 years old. When he was taken hostage, he was heading the Associated Press Bureau in Beirut. Today in Istanbul, unknown terrorists killed the head of Istanbul's police and the deputy head and his chauffeur. The terrorist, having shot the 2 men, disappeared in the crowd, and there is no further information. The 46th session of the General Assembly of the UN confirmed the appointment of the Secretary General. He is Boutros Ghali. Boutros Ghali, as the General Secretary of the UN, ends a month-long campaign to appoint a new General Secretary. Time said he is a General Secretary for all peoples, and that there could not be a better candidate for this position. He is known as a diplomat connected with Egypt's foreign policy decisions. He took part in the negotiations with Israel. He was born in 1922. He's a member of an aristocratic Coptic family. He's a Christian and married to a wealthy Jewish